Alright guys, thank you for clicking on the video today. It's probably not the best time for me to be making a video. As you can tell, my nose is a little stuffed up. I got a cold right now. But the work and the projects need to keep going, so we're going to keep going. So bear with my sick voice for this video at least. As you can tell from the title of the video, we are going to be working on a oil cooler mod today. As some of you may know, the Subarus come with some of them come with a factory, what is known as a oil cooler, and it's a part that sits above the oil filter, and it circulates coolant through it. So when the oil goes through the filter, it gets cooled off by the coolant, but it seems that it's mainly a oil heater. So when you start the car, the coolant gets hotter than the oil, or the coolant gets hot faster than the oil does, and then the coolant in turn heats up the oil quicker to get the engine operating temperatures to operating efficiency. But once the coolant's hot, you're trying to cool off hot oil with slightly cooler coolant, and it probably does a little bit of something, but maybe not that much. So an air to oil cooler is a lot more efficient because you're not using hot coolant to cool your oil. You're using cooled air. So it's been something that I've been deciding whether or not to do on the Subaru for a while, but I finally decided to pull the trigger on it because one of my last times up at Palomar Mountain, we were driving and I was beating on it pretty good, and it was probably like, close to 90 degrees that day, so it's pretty hot, and the oil temps were the coolant temps were climbing. The oil pressure was acting weird, but I have a bad sensor, so that's probably not the best way to be determining how my oil was. But the fact that my coolant temp was climbing, and I usually don't see that, I imagine the oil temperature was climbing pretty good too. So we're gonna fix that today with a oil cooler. So I bought this kit from Mishimoto. This kit's actually made for a 2008 to 14 WRX, but it's the same engine setup. So I imagine that the fitment will be pretty similar. The only thing I'm worried about is that the hoses will not be long enough to mount the oil cooler in the proper location. But let me just run through what the kit has, and then we'll figure out if it fits or not. So first things first, it's got a oil cooler. I think this is a 19 row oil cooler, so it's a decent size, not too big, not too small. Then we got some fat stainless steel braided AN lines with some fat fittings on there. Some fiberglass heat blanket stuff to wrap around the lines because it routes like right above the header. And we got the sandwich plate. This goes above the oil cooler, and this is a thermostatic sandwich plate, so this will help with the car warming up. So if you start the car, it's not just going to start running oil through the oil cooler and then make it really hard to get up to operating temps. So I don't know what thermostat is in here, but it will not flow oil through the cooler until it reaches like 160 degrees or something like that. And then this is an adapter plate that goes above there, and this is just supposed to space it out enough that it clears the headers, I'm thinking. And then it comes with a adapter and some fittings to go into the thermostat sandwich plate, some brackets and hardware, and then I also bought a new oil pressure sensor because, as I mentioned before, that was giving me issues. Not sure if this is going to fit, not sure if the brackets are going to work, but we're going to give it a shot. And then if it does fit, I can tell you guys, and then you'll know that this kit works for Outbacks and Legacy. So first thing we got to do is take off the front bumper. Alright, so we're facing a little bit of a dilemma here. So let's see how I can explain this. So this is a bumper off of Impreza, an older one, but you can see the openings in the front bumper are much bigger than the Outback. Very small openings. And the WRX, the 2008 to 14, the opening in the front bumper looks a lot like that one does. So this one, when you look at it, you can see if I mount the oil cooler there, you can only really see like the bottom third of it, and then the rest of it is behind the bash bar. So I don't know how efficient that's going to be. I mean, it does have like kind of a ducting for like the radiator and stuff, so it pushes the air up, and it might work for the oil cooler too. I'm not exactly sure. So I probably could mount it here, and it'll probably work decently because the airflow is going to be pushed up. It just wouldn't be as optimal as if it was just fully exposed to the air. So I think what I'm going to try, just to see, is I'm going to pull this shroud for the radiator out and see how close that bolts up to what it's supposed to do in the WRX. So with that shroud removed, the oil cooler lines up perfectly with the brackets. So they're just loosely installed because I didn't want to tighten those nylocks all the way. But this is supposed to bolt onto here, I believe. So that one's on track to line up pretty good. Actually, it's going to go underneath this spacer. So it's going to bolt up like that. So that's going to be in the right spot. And then I need to remove this because this doesn't do anything really, and then run a bolt through here to up there, but that lines up perfect. And then this bracket right here also loose, but this is supposed to go into a hole right there in the core support, and it lines up perfectly. So all that looks good. So even though the full oil cooler is not gonna get airflow, I think it should still do something, and then hopefully I'm going to trim and reinstall the shroud so that it fits. So just this section right here, I'm just going to start cutting where the oil cooler is hitting to get this as tight as possible, so the shroud still directs airflow up into the oil cooler and up into the radiator on both sides. And then I think it should work. I'm very surprised that the brackets actually lined it up, because that was the one thing I thought I was gonna have to do myself. But this is a Subaru, so Subarus are like Legos. I've always said this. Everybody's always said this. It's not my saying, but Subarus are like Legos. Things just bolt up together. So I think it's safe to say we can move forward with this. So yeah, before I get started on doing all the oil stuff on that end and routing lines, I'm just gonna get this put into place, get the shroud lined up, just to make sure everything's gonna fit, and then we can continue. I'm gonna drop this in here, and this top one is held on by this little pop clip that they provide you. So just put that in there, put that like that. Okay, so this one, I don't know if you can see this or not. This one's got a little spacer there, and I'm threading the bolt down into, there's a nut under there as well. So that's this bottom mount. So it's going. And this one was having a little issue lining up with the other ones fully tightened down, so I'm gonna get this one in place, and then I'll tighten down the other ones, and it should fit. Alright, oil cooler is in. Mounts line up decent. This one bent a little bit, and this one didn't line up perfectly, but I don't know how well they normally line up, but it lined up okay. Everything bolts in, so I think that's good enough, close enough. So you can kind of see how much is going to be effective. Not the best, but I think it'll do. Possibly once I get the new bumper made, I might trim this bottom section of the bash bar off, and that'll give us a little bit more exposed oil cooler. I'm gonna do that now too. I'll see what it looks like with the bumper on. Alright, so I kind of just loosely put the bumper up there, and I can see our first clearance issue right down there on the bottom. We're gonna have to trim that, so I think I'm going to try to just, make this a straight line and try to trim that back and move that clip into the center, because it looks like we only need one clip anyways. And then yeah, hopefully that'll fit up. It might need some more trimming. If that's the case, I'll trim it some more. So my line was pretty straight. It's lining up nicely with the oil cooler, but it looks like we need to trim some more because we're still a little bit away from fitting up. So I'm probably gonna trim. I'm gonna try trimming up to the bottom of that that hole right there. So I'm gonna try trimming up to the bottom of this hole. So hopefully we can still put a clip in there. And then just trim that straight across. So that's another about a 1/4 inch or so. I still have to trim it up or clean it up a bit, but I ended up just trimming this entire section. So you see that little ledge between the flat surface and the bolt and then the actual duct. I just trimmed that whole section off. So nice easy straight line to get. So I'm going to clean off all those burrs, but next step is going to be to trim this duct. I'm probably going to have to cut out a large portion of it. So the holes are lined up to where they need to mount. It just needs to slide back. But you see right in that crevice, I can cut this section out, and then right at that mark, cut out. So I should be able to just cut down to that flat spot, and this should fit up. But I'm going to trim it slow because I want this to fit nicely. So I'm just going to trim that with the Dremel like I did before with the bumper, and I'll be back once it's done being cut, and I'll show you kind of how much I removed. Alright, so the duct is back. The duct is backed in. I actually had to trim quite a bit, pretty much all the way down from this side, all the way down to there. And then I had to trim out this section right here to accommodate that spacer. And then I had to trim, you can see this piece came across here, so I trimmed out a little rectangle there for this mounting bracket to go through, and so it just mounts up there and everything fits now. And so now we still have the ducting to the radiator on this side, and I think it'll still duct up into the oil cooler and make it work a little bit better. And then there's a little bit of side ducting there to direct the air back in towards the center. So now that we got the oil cooler mounted up where it's supposed to be, and we got all the bumper and the ducting trimmed, we can now start routing lines. It's crazy how dark this oil gets in 3,000 miles. This car's not easy on oil, that's for sure. Alright, so now we can get the lines installed. So I'm going to pop these caps off. They're on there good. Okay. Alright, so that was a bit of a tight fit, but they're on. I got both of those on there, so the 90 goes on this one, and I think it's 105 degree goes on that one. And then they come down here. I had to trim this little piece right here, tight right in there, but it should tuck up. And then they tuck in through this opening right here and go to the oil filter area. So I'm gonna get that stuff set up so we can start attaching them there. Also, I didn't tighten these down all the way, they're just bottomed out because I still want these to spin a little bit, and if you crank these down sometimes it affects that, so still want a little bit of movement. All right, so now we're gonna go down there and install the spacer and sandwich plate with this guy right here. This is a 27 mil. I just gotta look up the torque spec for it, but we're gonna put some oil on these O-ring seals and then get that tightened down. So on the install video, it looks like they have it angled forward like this. So I'm gonna try installing it like that, but if it doesn't work, I'll probably turn it that way, because honestly that way makes more sense. All right, so it turns out it's easier to get this installed, get the hoses installed before you put the sandwich plate in. So, and get it, we're gonna slip it in like this and get it installed. Fucking mosquito flew right up my nose. Alright, so I'll give you a better look at this. I tightened these up. I pulled this one through a little bit more because it had some more slack to give. And then those ones come down. They loop down here, loop in over here, and go above the header into the sandwich plate. So the kit comes with this like fiberglass heat wrap to put on the hose right above the header, and it gives you 2 feet, and it says to put 1 foot sections over there, but I don't think we need the full 1 foot, so I think I'm going to cut it into like 6-inch pieces right here, and then use the other little bit we have left to put right here, just to so it's not rubbing against this. And like I said before, it probably wouldn't be a bad idea to cut this bash bar, but I just don't really feel like doing that at the moment. But if you did cut that bash bar, it would give these lines plenty of room. While the bash bar's off, this is a good time to show you what it looks like. Now you can see all the oil cooler, and we got the lines, they're tightened. You can see which fittings go where, how they route in to down there, and then I'll show you. Right in there goes the sandwich plate. And then we still have to put the oil filter on the bottom there, but I'm gonna do that in a minute. But I'm hoping, so now you can see the lines right here, got a little bit more room. So I'm hoping once I trim that bash bar that it won't pinch these down underneath here. It'll give it a little bit of wiggle room, and it won't rub the lines raw on any metal. So we're gonna go trim that real quick, and I'll be back when that's done. All right, so the bumper's cut, and I cleaned it up a bit. It looks pretty nice, a lot slimmer. So I'm gonna get this reinstalled, and then we're gonna see how much this improved the fitment. All right, so bar's back on, and this is way better. There's so much more room here. They're not rubbing on anything, except that part a little bit, but that should be okay. But yeah, they're not stressed anymore. They're not rubbing on anything. So yeah. If you want to do this to your car, you don't have to do this. I just did this because I felt like it, I guess. And then there's also a little bit more room for airflow right here for your oil cooler. So all there is left to do is to get the bumper back on the car and put some new oil in it to accommodate for the increased oil capacity. So I'm gonna do that off camera, and I'll be back once everything's back together. And then I'm probably going to have to fill it up with oil. It's going to say it's full, and then get the car up to operating temps so that it starts circulating oil through the oil cooler. And then once the oil cooler's full, then I can fill up the engine again back to full, and it should be good to go. I got 6 quarts of this Castrol Edge 10 weight 40 full synthetic. I was using Motul 6100 Synergy, but that's not full synthetic, so that's why I'm going with this now. I got 6 quarts. The car takes 4.2 from the factory. Have a slightly bigger capacity oil filter, and then we have the oil cooler now. So I think they said the oil cooler should be another 3/4 of a quart. So in theory, we can add 5 quarts and it should be fine. So I think that's what I'm gonna do. 4.2, yeah. Yeah, I probably need a little bit more than 5 quarts. Everything's back together. You can see the oil cooler up in there. Not too much exposed area, but all in all, I'm pretty happy with how it turned out. And you can see the lines in there. I don't have any way of telling what the actual oil temperature is, so I don't know how effective it is, but I have noticed my coolant temperature gauge is running a little cooler than normal, so I think the colder oil temperatures is also affecting the coolant temperatures and making them colder as well. So yeah, it's working, and bleeding it wasn't that hard at all. I just got it hot and I kind of felt the line, and when the output line got hot, I knew that the oil was flowing through it all the way, topped off the oil, and it's been fine ever since. So overall, I'm very happy with how this oil cooler fit up. I thought I was gonna have to do a lot more modifications than I did. I think for most people, cutting the bash bar is probably not something you would want to do, because I don't know what kind of effect that would have, like if you got into an accident and insurance seen that your front bash bar was cut up. But for me, it's fine. I don't really care that much. But I'm glad that I did this, because there have been no options on the market for an oil cooler. Just requires some plastic trimming and potentially a bash bar trim if you want to do that. But yeah, the install, it took me maybe 8 hours, so not bad at all, especially for installing a part that was not made to fit on this car. So yeah, hopefully you guys found this useful, and if you have an Outback or Legacy, maybe this is a sign for you to try this yourself and go ahead and get one of those oil cooler kits and cut up your bumper and get it to fit on there, and then you'll have a very nice oil cooler kit. So I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please leave a like down below. If you have any questions, leave them down in the comments below. If you know of someone who might like this video, please share it with them. And if you aren't subscribed, please consider subscribing. And as always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Peace.